All right. Good afternoon. It's 1410 hours on the East Coast of the United States. We are here for our fourth panel today. It's the old channel optimization duel. Organic content created by maybe even you versus traditional sort of, and what we'll call traditional is really, 100 years ago wouldn't have been traditional, but we'll say, traditional digital media platforms and avenues and so on. We're here joined today by Henry Prevette from impact.com and Eric Jones from WPengine, two really smart guys, maybe not as handsome as me, but certainly smart and capable, or be able to carry on a great conversation, about best practices and sort of, carrying on with a lot of our topics is sort of like not necessarily, antithetical here, right? It doesn't have to be a one or the other, but, to what extent is there, an amalgamation, a synthesis, what does that synthesis look like? And so on. I'll preface the exchanges and opening remarks by just kind of taking a little walk through the evolution of marketing. About 110, 25 years ago, in the 19th century, it was largely done by, word of mouth and is actually, by influencers. We certainly, remember stories of snake oil salesmen and other sort of confidence men who would, sort of take this to, to sort of insidious extremes, right? But, before, mass media channels, word of mouth and certainly someone that had credibility, either in your community or nationally, internationally was sort of the avatar for a lot of brands and sort of how, marketing first came about. And then we see, during the, the advent of, the real industrial stage of personalized industry, cars in particular, we see it going towards a method of just trying to like increase production, describing what kind of car you can possibly get, what type of dishwashers are available. And marketing was done primarily as a way of like, making sure inventory moved and that, production, was an efficient process. You then get to, middle of last century with, television and before that radio for sort of like mass media platforms, and marketing takes on, a kind of almost like scientific sort of approach. We see, the kind of Mad Men era, come about. We learn the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. We then see a move into different types of marketing, synergy marketing in particular. We all remember getting the McDonald's toy and the Happy Meal from the movie that we just saw that also mentioned McDonald's in it. And then on to digital advertising and then SEO, and then finally to social media, which kind of brings us back to where we started with the end user, word of mouth, and influencers, people with celebrity credibility and so on, having the ability to message peer-to-peer, folks who are also in the marketplace with them. And so I think it's a really kind of like an interesting conversation that we can have, is because, whoever said, what's past is prologue, and whoever said, what's past isn't prologue isn't even past, are probably both correct. And so I think, with a lot of things in marketing and branding and on the creative side of business, a lot of it is sort of subjective, and thusly makes for great conversation based on opinions, right? So with that sort of general preface, I'll first hand it over to Eric Jones from WPengine to sort of introduce himself, as well as his thoughts on the framing of the topic, and what opinions, if any, he has to share on what your approach should be as a merchant. Eric, it's over to you. Thanks so much for joining.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. I'm the VP of corporate marketing for WPengine. I oversee everything from our events to PR to internal comms to social to content. And just a quick little thing about WPengine, we power the freedom to create on WordPress. We do that through our products, our managed WordPress hosting platform, our headless WordPress product called Atlas, and then also through various. So all in all, we power about 1.5 million digital experiences sites every day. And that translates into about 8% of the people on the web passing through one of our sites every single day. So, you talked about this evolution that we've gone through over the last 100 years or so with, the sort of beginning with word of mouth, back to word of mouth. And I think the one new wrinkle maybe on it is it's all about authenticity today. I think in that word of mouth, the newer generations have grown up with digital, right? And so they've actually become, I would say, quite a bit more discerning about who these influencers are, who these celebrities are that are being used to market to them. I don't think we can blanket say, oh, you should definitely use influencers or you should definitely use celebrities or not. I think it all has to do with, do they actually use the products that they're out there, talking about, or, are they merely paid spokespeople? And, I think the reality is today, it's very easy to find out if they actually do stand behind the products that that they're out there talking about. We're finding that, buyers are doing more and more research before they buy things. I think the internet just within the last, even 10 years has shifted, right? It's no longer, I go online to look for the cheapest product. It is, I'm actually looking for the best product. Trends over the last, 10 years you see is, in fact, that is borne out. More and more searches are for best product versus cheapest product. And so you take the research that's being done, you talk about, what's best, and then you talk about sort of what's going on from a brand perspective. And I think where you go is consumers today don't want to buy from a brand. They actually want to join a brand. They want to have a relationship with a brand. There's the old saying, make friends before you need them. I would say that is absolutely applicable to brands today. Develop the relationship before they become your customers, right? And look to engage, educate, inspire, whatever the case may be, with those potential buyers well in advance of those transactions. After the transaction, so that you maintain that relationship, you maintain the connection, you maintain the loyalty, kind of going forward. And then obviously, like with data that we're all sitting on top of, you can absolutely, use that information to then serve, up and develop more and more relevant content so that you do stay top of mind and relevant and, in the thoughts of, of those potential buyers. So that's kind of my quick reaction to the whole thing.
Thank you so much. And now off to Henry Prevette for his opening statement. Henry from Impact, very happy to have him here. And yeah, I mean, Henry, if there's, obviously in addition to, your scripted opening remarks, if you wanted to respond to anything Eric had to say, that would be great. Otherwise, we'll just hand it over to you.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm Henry Prevette, Director of Channel Partnerships at Impact. I'm overseeing partnerships with technology partners and agencies. And Impact exists to support automation of partnerships. We support everything from influencer marketing to affiliate marketing, ambassador programs, and more integrated forms of partnerships. And I think we really exist. And some of what Eric said actually really resonates with our philosophy on our business, which is, consumers don't trust traditional forms of digital advertising the way that they did before. And so the way that you engage new consumers, new buyers, is by establishing trust through working with other partners, other influencers, other content writers that those consumers already trust. So that's what Impact does. We make it easier to connect those types of partners into a program, so that a consumer is already they're engaging content that is about a particular product, because much like what Eric said, some 60% of consumers are known to already proactively go and try to consult a blog or a post or a review before they ever make a purchase. So if you want to engage consumers, you need to be there instead of chasing them around programmatically with banner ads.
Great. All right. So we see from now, I kind of wanted to have you expand on that. Henry, is like, so why aren't people, and Eric, and I'd love to hear your response to this too, is like, why aren't folks or why are they skeptical or suspicious of banner advertisements and other forms of digital advertising? Is it simply that they've just seen it too much? Is it a younger demographic of folks that just out of hand reject it? Is it bad experiences in the past with fraud and other sorts of issues? Is it just people not wanting to see things they didn't come for and so on? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Eric, do you want to take it first, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to. For me, the crux of the whole thing goes to something that Henry said, which is trust. I think those types of ads, they don't provide any value really, unless you really need that particular product in that particular moment. Which yes, it does happen, but rarely, right? And so I think there's an inherent distrust that brands need to overcome. And you do that by sort of, providing content, by providing some type of value, delivering some type of value to the consumer, to the customer in some other way. Because in and of itself, like it's pretty transparent that the banner ad, or whatever the case may be, is very self-serving for the brand. And that's not the way the world works anymore, right? It's not a top-down approach. It's more collaborative. We've seen some genius campaigns by brands where they actually co-create stuff with their consumers. Lego's one that springs to mind with their various toys that they've built, and they've sort of open sourced it, right? They've said, hey, submit your idea for the next new Lego product. And then, they reward those efforts with the consumer. So I think, it's a very different world. I think, you mentioned the sort of TV ads of old, like, that was new then. And, newness can sometimes, work just because it's new. All that stuff is not new anymore. And we've been around it. And I think, the jadedness that, those of us who are growing up in the 80s had about, TV ads, now, millennials and Gen Z have about banner ads and all of the digital advertising that they're, kind of bombarded with. And I would say the other thing is, where our time is more precious than it's ever been before. And so I think that also skeptical and less engage with the things that you don't want to engage with. To put this into perspective, like let's say the average Gen Zer has a 10, 12 second attention span, right? The average load time for a mobile site is well over 4 seconds, right? And so when you play it out, you basically have 8 seconds. And to capture that, that person in those 8 seconds, we've seen an evolution from a study that we did on Gen Z. All generations before Gen Z, in fact, want informative content when they go online. And Gen Z is the first to want more entertaining content. And I think a lot of that has to do with this, this time issue. And so I think that's another thing, like, brands have to think about delivering some type in a shorter and shorter, time period.
Yeah, you know what? I think newness is definitely one. What it recalls to mind is the first banner ad that said, "I dare you to click here," or something like that, where it's, that worked at that time. But people, they learn new habits. They learn, they understand, okay, this is an ad, and it's no longer effective. I think the other issue is just abuse. Programmatic is, in the early 2010s, as programmatic really took rise, people weren't thoughtful about how often they were hitting consumers with the same creative over and over and over again. And that becomes pesky to a point where you actually do a disservice to your brand because you're annoying them with your logo or your product or your creative everywhere they go. So I think that's the other piece of it. And similarly, Eric, I agree. Even Consumers Affairs says that most adults are trusting their peers' recommendations, and they're asking their peers or watching what their peers are posting on social media, as opposed to looking at an ad or even trusting maybe even a macro influencer. They're more connected to what their friends think than somebody else out there that they don't have a relationship with.
So a question.
I was actually just going to say one additional thing. Like, I think an interesting place where this plays out, Dan, you brought up radio, in your sort of overview podcast today. Don't anymore. The hosts themselves will actually talk about their own experiences with the particular product. And I think that's an interesting microcosm of what we're talking about, which is, you are more likely to trust that person as a spokesperson for the product because they have direct experience with it. They're more trustworthy, they're more credible. And you can kind of hear it. You can hear, their own experiences, with the product. And many of them, because they do have their own personal brand, they don't want to affiliate themselves with just any company unless they truly believe in the product. So I think that's been an interesting change over the years, but it's a perfect microcosm of what we're talking about.
Yep, I think it's a great point, and I think it's certainly led by those those podcasters and celebrities themselves, because just like you say, they don't want to be found associating their own personal brand with something that they don't like or use and so on. So that definitely carries extra weight to it. The question that I had, listening to the two of you and Eric in particular is like, have we reached a point where the novelty has kind of worn off, where the conduit of the message, the platform that it's on is no longer going to sort of wow us? We think back to, the jump from, say, pre-radio to radio, and then from radio to TV, right? If we look at that, 50, 60-year period, that seems to me a quantum leap, right? From the newspaper to radio to television. Quantum leap. The leap is not as far in my mind from television to a smartphone, right? It's certainly it certainly is a leap, but maybe not as radical. And certainly from the first iterations of smartphone technology to what we have now, the kind of, this is all to say, where we were 100 years ago making quantum leaps, there seem to be smaller and smaller, and to the point where maybe the novelty has kind of worn off with users. It's going to be hard to sort of wow us with, the latest and greatest platform and have that be a kind of part of the marketing itself. I think like when TV and radio first came about, for you to be a brand or a business, marketing on those platforms was its own sort of, gave a sort of seriousness to it, right? That you were viable and had the ability to put your marketing assets on those platforms. Now it seems very easy for anybody anywhere to get onto any of the major marketing platforms, and there's sort of a kind of saturation there. And so to Eric's point about older folks in particular, just saying like, I'm really interested in good messaging and being able to find out what the hell this product does. I think speaks to a certain sense of, we can call it exhaustion or certainly a kind of like the novelty being worn off, that we're less interested in just the latest technology being able to deliver us some sort of message, but rather the message itself. And I'd like to just sort of hear you guys expound on that. Eric first, if you'd like.
Yeah, so I think what is going to be a wow that I can see on the horizon is actually predictive. So we've heard along, for a long time, is coming our way and all that stuff, and it's still not there. If we're really truthful about it, like we sort of see it on Amazon, right? Or you go to any retailer site, but the reality is they still don't totally understand, me as a customer. They haven't quite gotten to the point where, okay, they understand I may have bought this as a gift for someone else. And so it's not really, I don't need another whatever baby toy, even though, my kids are 14 and, they're teenagers. Like personalization, evolving into predict, I think is going to be an absolute game changer, because that will suddenly truly make, all advertising pretty relevant. And in a way that it hasn't truly been before. We had done, again, that sort of Gen Z study. We said, we found in that study that 41% of Gen Zers would leave a website in the future if it did not predict what they like, want, or need in the future. And that's pretty stark. I mean, almost 50% bouncing from your brand's experience, like, because it's not delivering on a predictive brand promise. I think that will be a big shift, and it'll be a fun one for us all to kind of tackle and go through.
And I think it's going to get more interesting and more fun as we see more privacy changes too, that will continue to make that process more challenging to identify a user accurately and present that content or that product that they actually are looking for.
Yeah, Henry, can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think this is something that's really, really important and comes up for our marketers, here at Trellis, quite a bit. And I think, is certainly something that, folks are going to, it's going to be, I think, a more ready conversation, for folks in marketing going forward. But if you just wanted to speak toward, some of the, privacy and regulatory compliance, issues and things coming down the pipe and what folks are sort of dealing with in that space, that'd be tremendously helpful.
Yes, I think, Apple's been a primary leader in this. Just aligns greatly with their brand and their philosophy, which is they're positioning themselves as protecting consumer privacy. And so they have done that through tightening third-party cookies and essentially making it very difficult for brands to track users the same way that they used to, and to identify those users using cookies, across multiple devices. And so that's obviously created a lot of challenges for a lot of advertisers or merchants that want to be able to personalize potentially an ad or tie an ad to a sale that ultimately occurred. And so, but MarTech as a space is ever evolving. It's one of the fastest evolving spaces in any industry. And so I think, a lot of MarTech companies are having to find ways that they can still identify a user and still provide a personalized experience while also being compliant with those regulations.
Yeah, I think brands should regularly ask themselves, do I need to collect all of the data that I'm currently collecting? If the answer is yes to that question, then how am I actually serving up an experience that delivers on that data that I'm collecting? And I think what you find is too many brands, unfortunately, are not doing anything special around all of the data that they're collecting. Like, do they really need the year of my birth, kind of thing? Are they doing anything special around that? And, I think almost, 100 out of 100 times, the answer is they're not doing anything with that. So why do they have it when we all know that, it's just a matter of time before, right? And so that just seems, like there's a responsibility there to think about that and, have that sort of, establish a clear value that they're going to protect, as Henry was saying in the case of Apple, they're going to protect the privacy, the data, the information of their customers.
Yeah, and I think and it's not just Apple. Obviously, GDPR is a government-sponsored compliance now that brands are having to pay attention to and be compliant with. And I think it's all, I think it's just another reason why it's important to have established to know how to establish trust with a consumer. And that's why Impact's vision is, hey, we're going to support that through enabling partnerships with content writers and influencers that consumer already engages with, and having that piece of content or that influencer actually endorse the product versus trying to personalize an ad that more or less follows that consumer around around the web.
Is the billboard dead?
No, I wouldn't say the billboard is dead. Clearly, you just gotta drive in your car to see a billboard. But I do think it's becoming less effective. So we obviously Impact has thrown out this piece of content recently that says advertising is, and we use it as, funny enough, as just to generate interest. And okay, why is that? And what we're seeing, obviously everybody's seeing it, is this saturation on Google and Facebook and Amazon. Everybody's putting 90% of spend into those platforms. It's raising CPMs and CPCs, and it's getting to a spot where it's actually, if continuing to do digital advertising through those platforms is starting to outpace the actual lifetime value of consumer the consumer that you can actually acquire through those marketing channels. So that's where we believe that there's got to be more alternatives, more creative ways to engaging consumers authentically than advertising through those three platforms.
And Eric, what are your thoughts? So, I mean, are we in an era where we're going to see, the highway side, sort of billboard and the banners hanging behind the prop planes and all of the other kind of archaic forms of messaging and content marketing, go by the wayside? Or is there maybe a sort of in the same way that we've kind of come full circle back to, the influencer and word of mouth. I mean, is there a kind of like 21st century version of the billboard or the banner behind the prop plane that we might not even have thought of yet? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think I keep coming back to, is it helpful? Is it useful? And billboards can be helpful and useful, right? Like you're driving along the highway, the kids are in the back seat, they're hungry, and you hit a billboard and basically says, hey, XYZ restaurant in 7 miles. That's actually helpful. And then you can make your decision, and you can, kind of go and do that, or gas station, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Is there an evolution where, perhaps that's going away? Our mobile phones, and you can kind of sorry, it seems like my internet's fading in and out. More and more you can basically do this on your mobile phone, and you can sort of see where the next gas station is. You can see the whole range of of restaurants that are available in an area. And now, because of the pandemic, nearly every company has gotten digital. So restaurants that a year ago didn't have those digital ordering ahead capabilities, now they do. And now it's super easy to, in fact, hey, I'm going to be at XYZ exit in 30 minutes, order ahead. It'll be prepared by the time I get there. And so I think we're already starting to see a change in that regard. And I think, there are lots of opportunities for marketers to think about, how those experiences, could be personalized, could be relevant, could be useful, and based on my prior, habits, I'm driving along, in the future, you could see, let's say a Chick-fil-A, sort of because I've gone to Chick-fil-A X number of times in the last month, as I'm driving on vacation, that gets served up to me. Right. And, that's actually going to be good for everybody. So I do see an evolution, and it's not necessarily dead. It's we're going to continue to come up with ways to make it more and more relevant and more useful.
Yep.
I love that example.
Yeah, me too.
I just had to say something on that because it's contextually relevant, right? It's helpful, to Eric's point, where you actually may want to know when there's going to be a next restaurant that you can stop and eat. I think that's so important. And I think where we got away from that with digital advertising is it got to be just so out of context. It's like, why am I went to the website to go read the news, and I'm being chased down by this product that I care nothing about. And I think that's where we went wrong. An example from our side that I think is relevant for this is Spotify and Ticketmaster. They work together, where when you're in Spotify's app, you're actually recommended your favorite artist that you're listening to. The Spotify will actually say, hey, your artist is coming to town. You could purchase tickets to their concert. And that's a very relevant partnership, because clearly you like that artist, and you are likely to want to know when they're going to be in town so you can buy a ticket. And so obviously I think that's another example of, just relevance and helping that consumer.
Yeah. So a move away from what we'll call sort of shock and awe, and a focus on the practical application, and its use for a particular consumer. No, I think that's a really great point. Yeah, I mean, if the highway billboard turns into, hey, if you order your burger, when you see this sign, it's going to be ready by the time you get there. That seems to be really useful. On a long car ride with the kids, right? Yep. Whereas, I'm not nearly as interested in seeing, like we've mentioned before, some buff bot or somebody trying to sell me that same burger. That's just going to make me feel worse about myself, actually. But but yeah, so instead of like, kind of relying on, emotion and things like, really focusing on the practical application of the product and of what you're selling. I think that's, extremely important. I had a quote, which is really, I think, relevant to what both of you guys are saying, is from Jay Levinson, who's the author of Guerrilla Marketing. And he says, the road to profitability is paved with credibility. And credibility is something you earn by how you market, where you market, how you treat people, how you act, and your overall level of professionalism. Away from the business arena, the term is called street cred, and it's the road to respect. And I think pretty much sums up, the shared views, expressed here. That no matter what your approach, and we at Trellis, I mean, oftentimes, recommend, a very diverse approach to marketing and messaging and the channels that a given merchant would use. But it's certainly got to be about, demonstrating, a sense of seriousness and credibility first before, we're going to see, an uptick in traffic and conversions and all of the things that, folks in the marketing and e-commerce in general, want to see. So I think that was, just a great quote to sort of sum up. If anyone has any sort of closing remarks or things that you wanted to mention or have me mention, now is the opportunity to do so. Send it to Eric first.
Yeah, I mean, I think so how does that affect us as marketers? I think what you're seeing is you need a lot of different people to help bring these experiences to life today. You need people who are engineers, you need people who are data scientists, you need, sort of your classic brand marketers. And, nothing really works in a silo anymore. And I think companies need to start, building out these functions a little bit more holistically and not thinking about them in silos, because truly all facets of the company needs to be brought to bear to be able to deliver on these types of experiences to customers today, right? It's got to be fast. It's got, relevant, and it's for the more you go younger, the more entertaining, the catchier, the wittier, and that's kind of where the storytelling, the classic brand stuff comes in. It all has a place, but I think it does require a lot of different subject matter experts to bring it to life.
Muted, Dan.
Oh man. Final word to you, Henry.
No, I think that was great. I think the final word from my side was it comes down to building trust with a consumer, and I think you have to do that increasingly by finding who that consumer already trusts and working with that entity or that person, that human. So it may be your existing customer base and actually having ambassadors that customers actually endorse your brand. And it could look like working with a trusted review site or editorial site that a consumer already trusts the recommendation of. That would be my perspective on it.
Great. Awesome. And we're just at time. And so, gentlemen, I thank you both very much for joining us today and discussing with us your views and edifying me and all of our viewers on, what to be thinking about, as we're looking to, both, start and then optimize, our different marketing channels and content messaging and so on. So to Eric and Henry, thank you both very much. We hope to do this again soon, and you guys are great. And so thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for having me, Dan. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend.
Dan.
All
Thanks,
right.
Eric.
We've got our next final session coming up.
Yeah, Henry.
really, really soon. So everybody hop on over to B2B e-commerce enablement and the B2B sales professional, and we'll see you there in a second.